Welcome back to another video, and today we'll be doing my collective eyeshadow palette review. Welcome back, and we are doing my very long overdue collective eyeshadow palette review video. I know I have been like referencing to this one now for some time now, but as I have been saying, there was a bit of a slower phase with eyeshadow palettes, especially at the sort of June-July in between time, so it has taken me some time to get to try enough new palettes to include them in a collective review. Today we are having the, I'd say, typical amount for these videos, so we are having 5 palettes, and for today's video there are a couple of palettes that I was like bit on that were like meh, but I wouldn't say that these aren't. Sometimes I do like to also like arrange these in the terms of which one was the best and which one was the worst, but we don't have like any bad palettes in this video. There are like few palettes that I will then discuss that which I feel that were like better than maybe the others, but all of these generally were pretty like good palettes, and I do say that considering that maybe during the beginning of summer we had palettes that didn't maybe wow me so much, so compared to that video we are now having actually palettes that I do feel that did actually, like some of them actually did wow me. But yeah, let's now get to the actually palettes themselves, and as always I will be editing pictures over here. I will first show quickly the palette as I have it, and then I will pop in a picture where you will see the sort of hand swatches and a couple of looks that I have created with each of these palettes. So let's maybe start with the palettes that I did feel that were like nice quality and I did like them, but they weren't perhaps as wowing as the palettes, other palettes that I have for this video. So I did a K-beauty haul, and the other K-beauty products have been in a collective makeup review video. You can find it in the same playlist that this video is included in. And within that same haul I did buy an eyeshadow palette. So this is the Rom&nd, and this was called the Better Than Palette 01 Pampas Garden, and they do have quite many of these. I got these from our local K-beauty retailer, and they had 3 of these, but I do know, for example, that if you go to YesStyle there is like, I think like 7 or 8 or maybe even more like more of these. How should I say this? I like the quality, and this did surprise me quite positively because this wasn't like the most expensive K-beauty palette that was available. Most of the K-beauty palettes that seem to be sold in our local K-beauty stores, those go for like something like the most pricey ones are somewhere around 30 euros, and then the less expensive ones are around 15 to 20 euros. And some of the individual shades are then like, because K-beauty brands do a lot of individual eyeshadow shades, and those are like cheaper. I was actually very positively surprised about the matte quality of this one. These are the kind of mattes that you can get a sheer layer with them, but then actually when you apply a second layer they do actually build quite quickly, and these blended in still together very nicely. So even these sort of deeper 2 browns over here, they blended in very smoothly, and I generally think that the looks that you will soon see are quite like, how should I say, they came out very pretty. Something I will say before we get to looks and swatches is that while this is a nice palette, you do have to consider that this has these sort of 2 very typical Korean shimmer shades. So these are pressed glitters, and these are something that you should be aware that in I think European standards and in North American standards these aren't recommended for eye use, because these are the kind of glitters that if they get into your like eyeballs they can cause eye damage. What is good about the sort of Korean formula compared to maybe, for example, some Western glitters that I think have been truly awful, and I have like tried to somehow stay away from those, is that the adhesive in these ones actually, you really don't need a glitter glue with them. These ones, they actually do stuck to your lids when you tap them with your finger. However, because the adhesive is quite strong, I had to do some extra steps in terms of cleaning. And for example, when I was thinking that this would be pretty good for a travel palette, but because the shimmers actually need some extra steps with my cleaning routine, meaning that I actually first go with some type of an oil to get the most of the glitter off, and then I sort of do a normal double cleanse routine that I do with all of my eye makeup, and then go over with a micellar water to get any sort of like sort of that if there is still some like something sticking. So with this one, definitely if you're using the glitters, don't first go to just shower and do your normal makeup cleaning routine, because then you will have glitters particles like all over your face, and these you truly do need some kind of like oil-based cleaning product to first get them like on all of your lids. The 2 other shimmer shades, which is this one and this orangey one, these are normal very good shimmer shades, and they do look very pretty on the eyes. The sparkles do make this special, so I will now, you will see the sort of images, and I would like, Even though I wasn't a super fan of like taking out the glitter shades afterwards, I do feel that those are also what does make this kind of special palette. So I think if this would have been just a basic like peach palette, I wouldn't have gotten this, because I have had this kind of palette in my collection before. It was the Colourpop, I think it was Peach Perfect or something. So this is quite, I'd say the looks and everything are quite close to that, but because it has this sort of like more like these sort of Korean or Asian type of shimmers, they do actually bring some extra sparkle to your looks. And altogether, you can see from the looks, you don't get like super lot of diversity. These are very basic, like brownish or peachy leaning orangey looks, but all the looks came out very pretty. And I do think that for someone, especially if you are a fan of these very easy, sort of easy to blend mattes, and then you want some sparkle to your lids and you aren't like looking for these sort of super duo or multi-chromes, I do think these sort of Korean eyeshadows are quite good for that kind of makeup style. But if you are, let's just say that, especially if you maybe have sensitive eyelids, then I wouldn't get these, or I would try to look for palettes that don't have these sort of stickier shimmer formulas. And just in general, that if you really don't like having like any kind of pressed glitters on your shadows, then obviously don't get these, because I do know that there are some Asian and Korean eyeshadow that don't have this sort of glitters, but it can be, for example, if you buy these online, it can be quite hard to tell which shimmer shades are normal shimmers and which are these sort of glitters that have the sort of adhesive. But altogether, this is a palette that I do still want to keep in my collection, and as I said, I was quite positively surprised because because of the pricing of this palette, I didn't have high expectations for it. But I do feel that it was still like quite effortless, and it was in one way a very positive surprise for me how easy this was to use. But just with the sort of glitter shades, be aware that those do take more work when you take them off. Next palette on the video. So I tried also something that has come and become available. Well, the K-beauty stores aren't anything new. Those have been actually in our country for quite some time. We've had a few K-beauty store chains, so that's kind of like interesting. But something that became available in a couple of retailers recently in our country was this one, so Moira. And with Moira, I have done a first impression video where I tried this one, and there were some other Moira products. The other Moira products haven't been included in a collective makeup review video yet. Those will be included later on when I have tried enough other kinds of makeup products, and I will give my final conclusion about them. But the palette is the Moment With You palette, and this was in their sort of Valentine's collection a few years ago. I did discuss it in the first impression video that it seems that our retailers didn't get the newest of the newest stuff. If you want to get the sort of, if you live in, especially if you live in Europe, the best place to get the newest Moira launches is a Boujee shop, which is a Dutch online retailer. They seem to get pretty quickly the newest Moira launches. If you live in States, obviously, then you can order from their website, and I do believe in States they are available in some like stores that you can actually see them. But about this palette, I was very surprised. Like, this cost around 25 euros, and I discussed this. I did my sort of eyeshadow palette ranking so far this year, which is already up in my channel. I did say that for 25 euros, there's quite a lot of very mediocre eyeshadow that gets sold in my country. 25 euros is quite of an, I'd say 15 to 25 euros is a price range that usually drugstore brands get sold, like a lot of like drugstore products. So in our country, I would say that 25 euros still goes to the drugstore category, because a truly inexpensive drugstore makeup, unless you buy something like Catrice or Essence or W7 or MUA, a lot of the sort of like famous sort of US based, like what in US for example are categorized as drugstore, those are quite expensive here. So considering like what the base expectation was based on the pricing, this is like awesome. First of all, the matte quality, very nice to build, very effortless to work with, beautiful. Like, I'd say it is definitely a very nice formula. However, this has a very neutral matte, so again, take that as you will, because neutral mattes aren't hard to formulate, but definitely like very good matte formula. Also the shimmers, what I especially liked about this one, that there are different kind of shimmer formulas. We have this sort of more creamier shimmers, so for example this With You shade, and then we have this sort of more like topper kind of shimmers, for example here in the middle, this sort of orangey Memory shade, and then I think like something that was maybe like in between is the sort of Always shade here, which is the sort of, It is not a completely like a topper-like shade because the yellow this has a bit of actually shift to it, so it is actually like you can just see the yellow when you use this one, but it's not maybe as sort of opaque and thick as this sort of like creamy formula that, for example, this shade is done with. So we have quite a good variety of these different sort of shimmer formulas, and altogether how these like shades combined and how this sort of this palette worked together, I was very pleasantly surprised. Something that I wasn't a big fan of, because of the matte, all the mattes are neutral except for the one, this sort of beautiful shade here, which is a more red leaning. The mattes don't bring a lot of super diversity with this one, and there's another palette in this video that I will be discussing where I feel that the mattes are the biggest letdown, not because the matte quality itself is bad, but because maybe the range of mattes that has been chosen. So the only way you get diversity with this one is the shimmers. The second thing that I wasn't super fan of, there's a row here of topper shades that look very similar to each other when you get them into your lid. So I especially with shimmers would wish that I can take a couple of topper shades of shimmers in my palettes, but if there are like 3 or 4 or even more of them, then I'm kind of thinking that yeah, but they kind of will end up looking very similar. I will show the looks now, and these looks I think show quite well that the only way you get really diversity with this palette is truly that if you like apply one of the like more colorful shimmer shades. Otherwise you are very like, especially as I said, because there were like 3 topper shades, and then there are also like, I think there are also like also quite like there's 3 like what I would categorize as so you can see there's like what I would categorize also as 3 purely like neutral shimmers. So the only way you will really get like any diversity is that if you use then the more sort of like there was the like a yellow sort of shifty shimmer, or the sort of pink shimmer, or the green shimmer. That is how I managed to get like more looks out of this one. It is like I do have to say that partially because this wasn't the only palette that was available, I could have picked out the other Valentine palette, because that's also that did become available with this one, and that had more sort of, I'd say, sort of pinks and purples in it. So and that didn't seem to have like with the sort of mattes, I think that had a bit more diversity to it, so maybe that would have been a better choice. But I am still like, even despite these drawbacks, I am still very impressed with this palette, and especially if you like your more especially warm and neutral leaning looks, then this is actually a good palette. And if you just want to dab into like color, that if you don't mind that your choice of color is like maybe one green shimmer or maybe one pink shimmer occasionally, but otherwise you very much like sticking with the more neutral shades, then this is also a pretty good palette. And you do get a lot of shades for this one, especially considering like how much it costs. Something I will also like at the end praise for this one, the packaging also doesn't feel like drugstore. There's actually some effort. There is like bit of this is a bit like raised, it doesn't really I think show in the camera, but this is a bit raised on the top, and there is a bit like shimmer, and this is like a very heavy duty cardboard packaging, so this also doesn't feel like a sort of typical drugstore palette that I see a lot in our sort of retailers. But yeah, those were sort of my thoughts about the Moira palette. Okay, so next 3 palettes are all palettes that I think are pretty, what I would call awesome palettes on their own, but I don't say that for this video. We had like also that I wouldn't call like, each of these still had a bit of an, how should I say, these are like definitely better than the palettes that we got in the beginning of the summer, but each of these still had a bit of drawback, so I'm not actually gonna declare any of these as like that, oh this was my like my #1 palette from all the palettes I have tried. Let's now first maybe get to the first one of these sort of palettes that went to the very good category. So I finally got the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. This was, my parents were traveling abroad and they were traveling in Spain, and Spain has a Sephora, and they sort of, then I asked them that could they maybe bring something for me, and they brought me this one, and I'm very, very grateful to them, and I think they actually paid this for me, so this was sort of a gift. So this is how it looks like. This has been like, if you have been in makeup YouTube for the last year, or when this was launched, you have probably seen multiple looks with different kind of creators, and there's been like a plenty of reviews of this one, so I'm gonna just give my thought about this one. There's definitely an upgrade in this formula, so this is my first time trying the upgraded Natasha Denona formula. I think first time she brought, there was the, why am I forgetting the name of the palette? Every time I'm filming I forget the name of the palette, and then I remember it after I have stopped filming. It is the sort of yellow-greenish palette that I'm gonna put the name somewhere, but it is the yellow-greenish palette that I think she came out with. Was it last? It was for the last summer, yeah, because last summer we had the trend of sort of earthy green palette, so it came out with that trend. And then I think this came out last fall, and this also continued the trend of having the new formula. The biggest upgrade definitely is the shimmers, and I do think that it's good that Natasha Denona did upgrade her shimmers, because a lot of people were starting to complain about that while her color combinations and matte formula, which is not my particular favorite matte formula, but it's still a pretty good matte formula. A lot of people were saying that's good, but they were starting to think that the shimmers are pretty lackluster. We have definitely now fixed the shimmer issue. Like, these are very beautiful, very sparkly, and it does really feel like there's an upgrade. I do feel that the matte formulas are also still pretty good, but this still isn't my favorite matte formula. For example, I did try the deepest matte shade here, which is the Silhouette over here. And I do feel that, just like with other deeper Natasha Denona mattes, I have had the issue that it does require still a bit more work compared to some other deep mattes that I have tried. I'm gonna now pop in the looks that I created, and I get why this palette has been popular. This is probably one of the if a lot of my friends who sort of want this easy everyday sort of neutral makeup, and they would say that, oh, I want something a bit special, and I really want to spend money on the palette, because obviously I'm not gonna recommend an expensive palette to someone who doesn't have the money for them. But they would say that they really want to invest into a very good neutral palette, and they would say that they would want the palette to do all their evening going out looks, but also their work office looks. And then I would recommend this one, because I could then tell them that, oh, you get some very nice neutral looks with this one, but as you can see from the pictures, you can also get there's quite a lot of sparkle with this one. However, just like with the Moira palette, I did come across I was doing I usually display only 3 looks, but truly I do think that these 3 looks encompass quite well that I do think with the shimmers we have some options. So with shimmers of this one, I do feel that we actually do get there's quite a lot you can do, but what really got me was that after a couple of times trying this, I was thinking that, okay, but what matte am I gonna try to have a different kind of look? And that's a bit strange, because we do have the 2 more peachier mattes here. We have the Wit, which is here, and then the Vague, which is here. But for some reason they don't translate, at least on my end. This could be a skin tone specific thing, but for some reason on my skin tone they don't actually go very peachy, which again could be also the intention, that because this is actually meant to be, depending who you ask from, this is either meant to be the neutral or cool tone palette that she has in her collection. But for some reason I felt really that with the mattes I quite quickly came to that there wasn't really anything more I could do, that it was then just a same look that I did, except that maybe then I put another shimmer on and it kind of looked a bit different, but maybe not different enough to actually say that if a person would have seen the photos of the looks side by side, they couldn't really tell that I had tried different shades. So with this one, if you like your neutrals and you like Natasha Denona and you really want to spend the money on this bit more expensive palette, I can definitely recommend this. But for me, I will just say that I was a bit maybe baffled that how quickly I got the feeling that I had ran out of options to sort of different kinds of looks. So it is actually quite good that I only include 3 examples, because with this one, truly the looks are all very beautiful that I get with this one. They are very beautiful, and I do feel this sort of effortless glam, but there isn't just that I feel that the options came to an end pretty quickly. But if you want to spend the money and you have been thinking that is it the I need a nude, is it as worth as people say, I would still say that yeah, if you're looking for a good higher end neutral palette and you especially like your neutral looks with a beautiful sparkle, then it's a good palette for that kind of a look and vibe, if that's what you're going for. So next is a palette from a brand that I decided to give a second chance to. So this is the Boujee Boudoir from Kaima Cosmetics, and this was really a ninja release. So this could be also that I sometimes watch Instagram stories without actually having a voice on them. So it could be that the owner has said on Instagram stories, because this is a one-woman run brand, that she has said that she's coming out with this one, but I was like surprised that this just popped out in the sort of Kaima Cosmetics Instagram feed that, oh, this is available. And I was like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? And I was thinking that, okay, yeah, I'm gonna just buy it, because I did say that the Skulls and Roses palette is a palette that I decluttered. I did mention in the collective eyeshadow review video that that palette was included, that there were some like issues, especially with some of the shimmer formulas, which were reminiscent of some of the like original shimmer shades that we got from indie brands that weren't always as perhaps like nice on the eyes or nice to use. But I said that on the collective eyeshadow palette review that I really want the brand owner to do more palettes, because I do think that she had a good eye for color stories. And then this palette came out, and I truly do think that this is a improvement. The mattes are still quite dry, and the mattes still aren't the most effortless to use. Especially again, I'd say with the deeper shades, for example this Regal shade, did require a bit of work to make it look nice, but it's not like they're also the most horrendous like matte formula that I have ever worked with. But with shimmers there's been improvement. There are like still like foily shimmers in here, for example this star shade over here, or this VIP, is it VIP? Yeah, shade over here, but they aren't as, because with the Skulls and Roses there was the issue that some of the like these sort of more these sort of thicker shades, they were also very hard to work with. They actually look, some of them look pretty awful in my eyes, and they were like very sticky for some reason, because they were quite sticky, they were hard to work with. But with this one, those kind of issues, there's been some refinement with these formulas, and I'm gonna now pop in the looks that I created with this one, and I'm gonna actually now honestly say that I was thinking when I had done the second look with this palette, I was thinking that why are these looks looking like I have done this before, and then I realized that this actually, despite the fact that I'm gonna see if I can bend the mirror. So some of these shades look kind of brown, but these are all quite mauve leaning. So actually even this sort of, for example this ecstatic brown over here, or even the deep shade Regal, these are actually mauve leaning browns. So actually what you are not getting is necessarily like, if you're looking for like neutral tones, these are actually like quite pink leaning browns, all of them. And then I was thinking that, especially combined with when I was starting to try out the more cool tone shimmers that this had, then I realized that, oh yeah, now I'm thinking this reminds a lot of the Ensley Rain Cold Moon. This is definitely not the same quality as Ensley Rain Cold Moon, but a lot of the looks that I did with this one, I have done them with the Cold Moon palette. And this is something that I will probably now say, that if you are still eyeing this, if you missed out with the Cold Moon palette, or it's too expensive, because for example if you live in Europe, and Cold Moon has been available now a couple of times in Monolith Shop, which is a European indie brand retailer, I think it's almost like, is it 80 or 90 euros? This isn't, this particular palette isn't as expensive. I think this was somewhere around, I bought it directly from their website, and it was around 50 or 60 euros. So it's not as expensive. The palette is missing the sort of matte, cool toned neutral shade. So if you want the sort of cool, have the palette include also the sort of matte, cool toned neutrals that were also meaning the grays, and then there were some green and blue leaning matte shades in the Cold Moon palette, then this won't fulfill your needs. But if you're okay with having the sort of matte cool tone shades out, and you just wanted the sort of pinky mauvish toned brown neutrals, and you wanted the shimmers, because this also has like, because the Ensley Rain palette also had like this sort of blue cool tone shimmers, or it had this sort of like green shifting cool tone shimmers. So if you were looking for sort of maybe more condensed version of the Cold Moon, this could be a good option. You don't get the same quality, like the Ensley Rain matte quality for example is definitely like better than the matte quality in this one, and the shimmers are a bit even like more refined. For example, I have always said the Ensley Rain, you can use the brushes on the shimmer, most of the shimmers. With this one, even though there's been refinement on the shimmers, I do still feel that your best option is to go with your fingers, because with brushes some of these still don't pick up. So that was just something, and I do think now afterwards that maybe I should have like looked at the palette's images a few times, and then maybe thought that, hey, that looks kind of familiar. But I pretty quickly then came into the conclusion why this looked familiar, because this is very much, it's not the same quality and it's not exactly the same as the Cold Moon, but if you have both of these palettes, there is a chance that you will start at some point thinking that why are you getting quite like similar looks, because there are definitely like similar, I'd say they are not siblings, but they are like cousins. But if you're eyeing this particular palette, I would actually recommend this much more than the Skulls and Roses, because I do say there's still been like a quality improvement, and very excited to see what the brand comes out. But I do think for a one-woman run brand, this is doing like, I do think they are doing good things, and I hope the owner continues with her brand, because I have been already like, this is like getting me much more excited for what she has in the future. So, last palette of this video. So this is the Unearthly High Temp palette, and this is definitely, I'd say, the ultimate summer palette for me, at least for this summer, because, I mean, look at it, look at the color story. I was a bit on the fence that do I want to buy this, because when I initially, and this was again a palette that a lot of people got, influencers got on PR, so I actually did have quite a lot of like video material to base my buying decision before getting this one. And because when I saw this, I was thinking that, yeah, the bottom row is definitely something that 100% is me. There's some muted purples, there's some pinks, there's like everything. But the upper row had some things that I wasn't so excited about, so it had this sort of very heavy yellow leaning shimmer. I like yellow mattes, which again this has, but the sort of very heavy yellow leaning shimmers or these sort of old gold shimmers, those are like, I don't like those. Also something, this had this sort of orangey shade over here, which is kind of also this sort of bright carrot orange eyeshadow, not my first thing. But I did watch some reviews, and as I said, the Unearthly My Dream palette did get me sort of Unearthly back into my sort of good category again after I had tried the brand a couple of years ago and I wasn't so impressed with that one. And the Dreamer palette had like sort of an upgrade to the formula. And I'm pretty happy to see that this is even like, I'd say this is even better than the sort of My Dream palette. Something that was a bit meh, I will say, is this more sort of like pastel-like mattes here. So this yellow over here and this pink over here, those do require, they aren't like, I'm gonna do the comparison to Blend Bunny, because Blend Bunny has, I think, the best pastel matte quality in terms of the fact that they pack a punch and they build immediately. These definitely aren't in that category, you do need to work with them a bit. But especially I do think where there's been even more improvement, because I did make in the My Dream palette, I did discuss that with that one, especially some of the deeper purple and blue shades, I did feel that those were a bit stiff, but I do feel that there's been like improvement, that now all these sort of other sort of matte shades, they do actually blend in together quite well, and I'm very like pleased with that one. And especially like what I like more about them in this one than My Dream is the shimmers. This only has 4 shimmers, but these shimmers, like, I don't know what they did with these, but these like, because the My Dream palette had bit that the shimmers were, I did like them quite a lot, but I did feel that it had quite a lot of toppery shimmers, or the shimmer, even the more like shimmers that had base, they did still require building, but these have a, what I would call a shimmer base that I like, that these shimmers have color base enough for them. So these shimmers actually, you are able to get more looks because of the shimmers, because the shimmers don't blend into the matte shades underneath them, but they are actually opaque enough to bring something different to the looks. You're gonna see now the looks and the swatches of the palette beside, and you don't get like anything subtle with this one, so definitely if you're considering this buying this palette, then make the think first that are these color tones that you will use. If you don't go for super colorful and punchy eyeshadows, please don't get this palette, but if you want if you like your punchy colors and you especially like this sort of very warm, even like hot summer colors, then I would recommend this one. And I did find that working with this one was very pleasant. As I said, the lighter matte shades, those required bit building, but they still did what they were like supposed to, and they did help in blending out some of the deeper shades. And especially with the shimmers, I truly hope that Unearthly will stick with this particular shimmer formula, because I do feel that the shimmers especially really made this palette like in sort of thinking that wow, this is something like very special. And even though the shimmers aren't like, there's only like I think one, I'm gonna have to like wipe my fingers soon, but I think there's only one like official multi-chrome here, which is the glowing shade, which is the sort of orangey. It looks, I think, orange in the camera, but it sort of has a gold and a bit green shift to it. But I don't actually mind it because even the shimmers that aren't officially multi-chromes, they still, I feel that, are very impactful. And as I said, the shimmers are alone something that you can like change your like look completely with, because they don't just sink into the matte shade that's under them. And also, I do have to say that actually this is a palette that did get me doing, also trying out bit like, not all matte looks, but maybe doing some all matte inner, like all matte, like matte things, to, like using matte shadows to my inner corners, because this is a like also pretty good palette if you want to sort of add a fun pop of color. These are also pretty good colors and pretty good matte formula for that one. So if you like your sort of matte all over the lid looks, or sort of want a pop of a colorful matte, then I also do think that this is pretty good. But yeah, that was the sort of last palette that I had for this collective review video. So those were all the palettes. Comment down below, have you tried any of them and what did you like about and how did you like them? I am definitely saying that, as I said, this was more exciting than doing the previous collective palette review video, and so it took some time, but we got there in the end. And I do say that I think for the next palette review video also, we are also going to be having again a bit more exciting stuff. So I do think generally in palette releases, I think the beginning of the summer was a bit slow. We got this sort of a lot of these golden palettes that I was thinking that yeah, a bit meh, not excited. But then I think when we got into the sort of beginning of July, then we started seeing a lot of like these very interesting palette releases. And I will be filming my makeup news video after this, and it seems that the interesting palette releases will actually now continue to the August. So it seems that after the sort of maybe a bit mediocre May-June time, we are getting something more exciting now on July. Well, not anymore July, like we are already on August, but we got something more, we started getting something more exciting in July, and that seems to be continuing at least to the August and hopefully to the September. But anyway, if you like this video, push the like button, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell button if you want to get notifications from my future content. You can also find me with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog, on Instagram. I hope I'll be seeing you again soon. Bye bye!